What if everything you were ever taught about success was designed, not to lift you up, but to keep you exactly where you are? What if the systems around you, the schools, the workplaces, the social circles, were never built to celebrate your greatness, but to celebrate your compliance? Sit with that for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you might be the most uncomfortable truth you've ever been asked to accept. We live in a world that says it rewards excellence. Every motivational poster, every graduation speech, every LinkedIn post screams the same gospel. Work hard, stand out, be extraordinary. But look around you. Really look. The person who challenges the meeting gets quietly sidelined. The artist who breaks convention struggles to pay rent. The thinker who questions the consensus gets labeled difficult, arrogant, or unstable. Meanwhile, the one who nods along, who delivers exactly what is expected, nothing more and nothing less, gets the promotion, the approval, the quiet safety of belonging. This is not an accident. This is architecture. To understand why society rewards mediocrity, we have to go back, not to last year, not to the last generation, but to the very foundations of how human civilization organized itself. For most of human history, survival depended on the group, the tribe. And tribes, by their very nature, are suspicious of deviation. The individual who thought differently, who hunted in a new direction, who challenged the elders' wisdom, was a risk, not because they were wrong, but because unpredictability threatened cohesion. Societies learned over thousands of years to suppress the outlier and to reward the one who fit. Plato saw this. He watched Athens execute Socrates, the most brilliant mind of his age, for the crime of asking too many questions. Not for violence, not for theft, for thinking, for making people uncomfortable with the gaps between what they believed and what was true. Socrates was the most dangerous kind of person in any organized society, someone who refused to pretend. What happened after Socrates should haunt you. Athens didn't collapse without him. It continued. It functioned. The machinery of the ordinary moved on as it always does, as though genius had never walked its streets. That is the quiet horror of mediocrity's victory. It doesn't announce itself. It simply continues. Now fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, for the first time in history, millions of human beings were organized not around tribe or faith, but around production. The factory floor didn't need visionaries. It needed workers who could repeat the same motion, at the same pace, without questioning why. The entire educational system that most of us grew up in, the bells, the rows of desks, the standardized tests, the grades that rank human potential on a single numerical scale, was not designed by philosophers. It was designed by industrialists. They needed compliant, predictable, replaceable units of labor. And they got them. They got us. Think about what school actually rewarded. Not curiosity, not originality, not the courage to be wrong in search of something true. It rewarded the memorization of answers that someone else had already decided were correct. The student who colored inside the lines, who raised their hand at the right moment, who never asked why. That student got the gold star. And the rest of us, the dreamers, the questioners, the ones whose minds refused to stay inside the box, we were told we had a problem. But here is the deeper question that nobody asks out loud. What does it cost a society to truly reward excellence? Because real excellence is disruptive. Real brilliance destabilizes the comfortable. Real originality makes the average feel insufficient. And the average, let's be honest, is the majority. Democratic systems, consumer markets, social algorithms, they all have one thing in common. They are built to serve the center, not the edges, not the peaks, the wide, safe, comfortable middle. This is why the most mediocre song often tops the charts, while the most innovative album struggles to find an audience. This is why the most derivative film earns billions, while the most daring piece of cinema plays in half-empty theaters. This is why the most charismatic politician, not the most intelligent, not the most principled, usually wins the election. We tell ourselves we celebrate greatness. But what we actually worship is familiarity dressed in the costume of greatness. If this idea has already touched something deep inside you, if you felt this your whole life without having the words for it, imagine what happens when we go even further. Subscribe so you don't miss the next step of this journey, because what comes next changes everything. Now, I want you to think about someone you know. Maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's a sibling. Maybe, if you're brave enough to admit it, it's you. Someone who learned somewhere along the way to make themselves smaller, to dim the light just enough that it didn't blind anyone else, to edit the ideas before they were even spoken, because some quiet internal voice said, "They won't understand. They'll judge you. You'll be alone." That voice has a name in psychology. It's called social conformity pressure, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch ran a series of experiments that should have changed everything we believed about independent thought. He showed groups of people 2 lines on a card and asked which one was longer. The answer was obvious, unmistakably clear. But when everyone else in the room, all actors all in on the experiment, gave the wrong answer, a shocking number of real participants went along with it. Not because they were stupid, because the fear of social rejection is, at the neurological level, nearly identical to physical pain. We are wired to belong, and belonging, in most social structures, means not standing too far above the rest. There is a term in sociology called the tall poppy syndrome, the cultural tendency to cut down individuals who rise above their peers. It's been documented in Australia, in the UK, in Japan, in workplaces and families and friend groups all over the world. The tall poppy doesn't get celebrated. It gets cut, because its height is experienced not as inspiration by those around it, but as accusation, as a silent reminder of what they chose not to become. So the person who dares to excel learns, often painfully, to manage their visibility, to ration their ambition, to present their achievements with apology wrapped around them. "Oh, it was nothing really. I just got lucky. Anyone could have done it." We call this humility, but often it is something sadder. It is the scar tissue of a person who was punished for shining. And here is the unbearable irony at the center of all of this. The mediocrity that society rewards is not comfortable for the person performing it. The man who abandons his novel to take the safe office job does not feel peace. He feels a slow erosion, a quiet daily grief that he cannot name and nobody around him acknowledges. The woman who suppresses her voice in the meeting, who shrinks herself to fit the container others built for her, does not feel belonging. She feels invisible. Safe and invisible are not the same thing, but we confuse them over and over because the alternative feels so terrifyingly exposed. But there is a secret hidden inside all of this, one that most people never reach. Are you ready for it? The system that rewards mediocrity is not invincible. It is not eternal. And it is not, despite what it wants you to believe, natural. It is constructed. And what is constructed by human beings can be deconstructed by them. Every single figure who has genuinely changed the world, every artist, every scientist, every philosopher, every leader whose name survived the centuries, every one of them had to make a choice at some point. A terrifying, solitary, completely unreasonable choice to stop performing mediocrity and start living from their actual center. Darwin waited 20 years to publish his theory of evolution because he knew it would destroy his social standing. He published anyway. Van Gogh sold 1 painting in his entire lifetime, ridiculed by the very society that would later sell his work for hundreds of millions of dollars. He painted anyway. Simone de Beauvoir was told that her ideas were too radical, too threatening, too outside the lines of what a woman was supposed to think. She wrote anyway, not because they were fearless, but because the cost of silence had finally exceeded the cost of exposure. This is the turning point that nobody puts in the motivational poster. It is not the moment you stopped being afraid. Fear never goes away entirely. The turning point is the moment you decide that your truth is more important than your comfort, that your actual life, not the performance of a life, is worth the risk of being misunderstood. Psychologist Abraham Maslow called the highest level of human development self-actualization, the process of becoming fully what you are capable of being, and he noted something devastating in his research. Most people never get there, not because they lacked the capacity, but because they spent their entire lives on the lower rungs, chasing safety, chasing approval, chasing the validation of a system that was never designed to see them fully. The philosopher Albert Camus wrote that the only serious question in life is whether or not to embrace the absurd, to keep creating, keep reaching, keep demanding meaning from a world that offers none automatically. Mediocrity is the answer of someone who has given up on that question. Excellence is the answer of someone who refuses to. And here is the final revelation, the one that connects everything. Society rewards mediocrity not because mediocrity is valuable, but because it is manageable. You cannot manage a genius. You cannot predict a visionary. You cannot contain someone who has stopped needing your approval. The truly excellent person is, in the deepest sense, free. And freedom, real freedom, has always made systems nervous. So the question is not whether society will start rewarding your excellence. It probably won't. Not immediately, not loudly, not with the gold star and the corner office and the unanimous applause. The question is whether you are willing to pursue your excellence anyway, for its own sake, for the integrity of being fully alive, without waiting for a permission slip from a world that was never going to give you one. You already know what you are capable of. You have always known. The voice that keeps surfacing in the quiet moments, in the shower, in the sleepless hour before dawn, in the middle of the conversation you're only half present in, that voice is not delusion. It is memory. It is the memory of who you were before the world taught you to be smaller. The world rewards mediocrity, but you were not made for the world's reward. You were made for something far more dangerous, far more alive and far more true. If this video reached something in you, something you haven't heard named before, please like it and share it with one person who needs to hear this. Subscribe to this channel because this is only the beginning of the conversation. Leave a comment below. When was the first time you made yourself smaller to fit someone else's comfort? Let's talk about it, because the dialogue that changes lives doesn't happen in the silence. It happens right here, between people who are finally willing to tell the truth.